and forget everything you think you know about Vikings. Put aside the horn helmets which they never wore, by the way, and the cartoonish brutes from movies. Let's journey back 1,000 years, not just across the storm-tossed Atlantic, but into the very heart of what it meant to be a Norse explorer. We go into reimagine the moment Vikings first set foot on the shores of what we now call America, not as a historical footnote but as the beginning of an epic saga carved into a vast and known land. This wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of generations of westward expansion. It started with Iceland, a volcanic rock in the middle of the ocean. Then, Eric the Red, a man exiled for his temper, gambled on a rumor and found a colossal island of ice and rock, which he cleverly named Greenland to attract settlers. It was his son, Leif Erikson, who would take the final, daring leap. Imagine Leif, standing on the prow of his longship, the Nair. He's not a king or a conqueror in the traditional sense. He's more like a startup CEO, a venture capitalist of the ancient world. He's heard stories from a merchant named Bjarni Herjolfsson, who was blown off course and saw a new, green land to the west but was too cautious to explore. Leif isn't cautious. He buys Bjarni's ship, gathers a crew of about 35 hardened men and women, and sails toward the sunset, chasing a rumor. Picture the scene. The North Atlantic is a monster. Icy winds tear at the sail, and colossal waves threaten to splinter their wooden vessel. For weeks, their world is nothing but gray water and gray sky. These sailors aren't just muscle, they are master navigators. They read the sun, the stars, the flight of birds, the color and swell of the water. Every sense is attuned to the environment. This is survival as an art form. Then, one morning, a cry from the lookout land. Not the barren rock of Greenland, but something new. First, they find a land of flat stones and glaciers, which Leif names Helgeland, or land of flat stones, likely Baffin Island. It's uninviting, so they press on south. Next, they find a coastline blanketed in thick forests. The air smells of pine and damp earth. Leif calls it Markland, forest land, which was probably the coast of Labrador. This is promising. Timber is a priceless resource back in Greenland, where trees are scarce. They land, fell trees, and feel the solid ground beneath their feet. But Leif's ambition pushes him further. He's looking for a place not just to visit, but to live. They sail south again, and this time, they find paradise. A land with a milder climate, where rivers teem with the largest salmon they have ever seen. The dew on the grass is sweet, some sagas even claim it tasted like honey. And most astonishingly, wild grapes grow in abundance. For a people from the cold north, this is a land of mythic plenty. Leif, a natural marketing genius like his father, names this place Vinland, the land of wine. They build a settlement, a small cluster of turf and timber longhouses at a place we now know as Lanzox Meadows in Newfoundland. This isn't just a camp, it's a foothold, a declaration. They repair their ship, they forge iron from bogor, they spin wool, and they prepare to spend the winter. Think about the psychological shift. For their entire lives, they've known the world as Europe, Iceland, and Greenland. Now, they are on a new continent. The trees are different, the animals are unfamiliar, and they are utterly, completely alone. Or so they think. Soon, they encounter the native inhabitants, whom the Norse call Skrallings. This first contact is one of the most fascinating moments in human history. Imagine two worlds colliding. From the Norse perspective, these are small, dark-haired people using stone tools and paddling kayaks that look like they're from another world. For the indigenous peoples, whether they were the ancestors of the Mi'kmaq or the Beothuk, these tall, pale, bearded strangers arriving in a dragon-headed ship must have seemed like beings from a legend. Initial interactions are a mix of curiosity and trade. The Norse have metal and cloth. The natives have luxurious furs. But cultural misunderstandings are inevitable. The sagas tell of a tragic incident where a bull from the Norse camp gets loose and terrifies the Skrallings, shattering the fragile peace. Tensions escalate. A skirmish breaks out, and arrows fly. It becomes clear that this new world is not empty, and it will defend itself. This is where the story shifts from exploration to survival. Leif's brother, Thorvald, leads a later expedition. During a clash with the natives, he is struck by an arrow and utters one of the most stoic lines in history: "This is a rich country we have found. There is plenty of fat around my belly. We have won a fine and fruitful country, but it is not our fate to enjoy it for long." He asks to be buried in Vinland, a cross at his head and feet, forever claiming a piece of this new world. Another attempt is led by a remarkable woman named Gudrid Thorbjarnardottir and her husband, Thorfinn Karlsefni. Theirs is the most ambitious effort, a full-blown colonization attempt with multiple ships, livestock, and around 160 settlers. Gudrid is a force of nature world traveler who had been to Rome and back. In Vinland, she gives birth to a son, Snorri, the first European child born in the Americas. For 3 years, they try to make a life there. They trade, they farm, they build. But the conflict with the Skrallings continues, a constant, low-level war that wears them down. What if they had succeeded? What if the Norse had established a permanent kingdom in America, 500 years before Columbus? History would be unrecognizable. Imagine a Viking Age New York, at Jorvik on the Hudson. Imagine Norse longships sailing the Great Lakes, trading with and influencing the powerful civilizations of the Mississippi Valley. The exchange of technology, culture, and biology that defined the Columbian Exchange would have started centuries earlier, in a completely different way. But it was not to be. The Vinland settlement was ultimately abandoned. Why? It wasn't one single reason. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The distance from Greenland was immense, making resupply and reinforcement nearly impossible. Their numbers were small, perhaps only a few hundred people at most. And the relentless pressure from a native population with a massive home field advantage was simply too much. The Vikings were not driven out in a single, glorious battle. They just faded away. The cost in blood and resources was to hide for the potential reward. Greenland itself was a marginal colony, and it couldn't support a venture an ocean away. Yet, the story doesn't end there. The sagas prove the memory of Vinland was kept alive for centuries. There is evidence that Norse sailors continued to make trips from Greenland to Markland for timber well into the 1300s. They left their mark, not just in the archaeological remains at Landsox Meadows, but in the stories they told around the fire on long winter nights. The Vikings in America weren't just raiders looking for loot. They were explorers, pioneers, and families looking for a new home. They were rugged adventurers who crossed the known world and stepped into a new one. They faced the unknown with a courage that is almost impossible for us to comprehend today. Their story is not one of failure, but of breathtaking ambition. It's a saga of what could have been, a ghost chapter in the history of a continent, whispered on the cold winds of the North Atlantic. They didn't conquer America, but they were the first to dream of it. And that, in itself, is a legacy worthy of a saga. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this exploration into the Viking Age, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating stories. Let us know in the comments what historical what if you'd like us to explore next. Until then, stay curious.